Every day the world loses legends, icons whose lives shaped our culture, our memories, our hearts. From actors to musicians, pioneers to visionaries, their stories deserve to be remembered and celebrated. Welcome back. Here we honor the lives, achievements, and legacies of those who passed. The tragic news was confirmed with quiet sorrow, as the world said goodbye to Nedra Talley-Ross, a woman whose voice once helped shape the sound of a generation. For many, her passing is more than the loss of a singer. It is the fading of another bright light from a golden era when music carried innocence, passion, and unforgettable harmony. Nedra Talley-Ross was not always the loudest name in headlines, but her presence was deeply woven into one of the most beloved musical groups in American history. As a founding member of the Ronettes, she stood beside her cousin Ronnie Spector and Estelle Bennett, helping create a sound that would define the spirit of the 1960s. Born with music close to her heart, Nedra grew up in a time when dreams often began in church choirs, family gatherings, and neighborhood performances. Alongside those closest to her, she helped transform youthful ambition into something far greater. Together, the Ronettes became more than a group. They became a cultural force. Their rise came during a changing America. Pop music was evolving and audiences were searching for something fresh, emotional, and electric. The Ronettes answered that call with style, confidence, and a voice that felt both glamorous and deeply human. Songs like Be My Baby, Baby I Love You, and Walking in the Rain became part of American life. While Ronnie often stood at center stage, Nedra's harmonies were essential to the magic. Her voice helped build the emotional depth behind the group's unforgettable sound. In an era filled with competition, the Ronettes stood apart. Their fashion, their stage presence, and their music captured the imagination of millions. Nedra's grace and steady presence became a key part of that success. She was often described as elegant, grounded, and quietly powerful. While fame can sometimes overshadow the people behind it, those who knew the music understood her importance. She was one of the pillars holding up a legendary sound. Music historians have often reflected on how the Ronettes influenced generations of artists that followed. From pop stars to rock musicians, many saw them as pioneers. Nedra's role in that journey remains undeniable. She helped create something timeless, one longtime music writer shared. Nedra Talley-Ross was part of a sound that never really left us. Behind the bright lights and sold-out crowds was also a woman navigating the pressures of fame, industry struggles, and changing times. Like many artists of her generation, her path was not always easy. But through it all, her contribution to music endured. As decades passed, the songs remained. New listeners continued to discover the Ronettes, proving that true art does not age. Nedra's voice, preserved in melodies that still play across radios and playlists, became a bridge between generations. Fans across social media expressed their sadness as news of her passing spread. "One more angel from music's golden age," one fan wrote. "Thank you, Nedra, for the soundtrack of our youth." Another tribute read, "Her voice was part of history. She may be gone, but those harmonies will live forever." For her family, friends, and devoted fans, this loss feels deeply personal. She was not only a performer, but also a symbol of an unforgettable time in American culture. A time when girl groups changed the music world and opened doors for future generations of women in entertainment. Nedra Talley-Ross helped prove that harmony was not only musical but cultural. Her work helped shape how female artists were seen, heard, and remembered. Though years may pass and voices may fade, her legacy remains in every note that still brings listeners back to that extraordinary era. The sparkle of the Ronettes was never built on one star alone. It was built on voices joined together, and Nedra's was one of its essential lights. Her passing marks the end of another chapter in music history, but not the end of her influence. She leaves behind a timeless reminder that music can outlive sorrow, outshine loss, and continue speaking long after the stage grows quiet. Now, as the world remembers Nedra Talley-Ross, it remembers more than a member of a famous group. It remembers a woman whose harmony helped define an age, whose grace helped shape a legacy, and whose voice will forever echo through one of America's most treasured musical memories. And somewhere in the soft return of an old song, her spirit still sings. The tragic news was confirmed with solemn reflection, as America said farewell to Donald W. Riegle, Jr., a statesman whose life was defined by service, conviction, and a deep sense of duty to the people he represented. His passing marks not only the loss of a former senator, but also the closing of a chapter shaped by principle during some of the nation's most important political years. For decades, Donald W. Riegle, Jr. stood as a steady presence in American public life. From the streets of Michigan to the halls of Washington, his journey reflected the path of a man committed to public trust over personal gain. Born on February 4, 1938 in Flint, Michigan, Riegle came from a state deeply tied to America's industrial strength. Growing up during a time of economic challenge and national change, he developed an early understanding of hard work, civic responsibility, and the importance of leadership. Before entering politics, he built a foundation through education and military service. Those early experiences helped shape the disciplined and thoughtful approach that would later define his career. When he entered the political world, Riegle quickly became known as a voice willing to engage difficult issues. He first served in the U.S. House of Representatives, representing Michigan with determination during a time of growing national tension. But it was in the United States Senate where his influence grew even stronger. Elected to the Senate in 1976, Donald Riegle became one of Michigan's most prominent political figures. Over the years, he earned respect not simply for holding office but for how he used it. He was seen as serious, informed, and often guided by a strong moral compass. Throughout his career, Riegle worked on critical national issues, including banking reform, environmental concerns, and public health. During moments of uncertainty, he often stood at the center of conversations that shaped American policy. Perhaps one of his most remembered roles came during the savings and loan crisis, when public confidence in financial institutions was deeply shaken. Riegle's leadership during those years reflected his belief that government must remain accountable to the people. A former colleague once said, "Don Riegle believed public office was a responsibility, not a privilege." He carried that belief every day. His work was not always easy, and politics rarely offered simple victories. Yet even critics often recognized his seriousness and dedication. He was part of an era when political battles could be fierce, but service itself remained a respected calling. For the people of Michigan, he was more than a senator. He was a representative of their concerns, their industries, and their hopes during changing times. His career also reflected personal courage. He was known for speaking openly on issues affecting veterans and public safety, often pushing for answers when others remained silent. His role in investigating health concerns tied to military service showed his willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. Senator Riegle fought for people who felt forgotten, one public tribute shared. He used his voice when others needed one. As news of his passing spread, many remembered not only his policies but his character. Social media tributes described him as thoughtful, disciplined, and deeply committed to democratic values. One of the last of a generation that believed government could still do good, one message read. Though political landscapes changed over the decades, Donald W. Riegle Jr.'s legacy remained tied to a period when leadership often demanded patience, study, and resilience. He represented a model of governance shaped less by spectacle and more by responsibility. His departure feels especially meaningful in a time when many Americans continue to reflect on what public service should look like. Riegle's life offers one answer: that leadership can be firm without losing integrity and powerful without losing purpose. Beyond legislation and headlines, he leaves behind something deeper: an example of civic dedication. For his family, friends, former colleagues, and the countless citizens he served, his memory now stands as part of America's larger political story. A story not only of elections and office, but of service rooted in belief. Donald W. Riegle Jr. belonged to a generation that helped guide the nation through challenge, reform, and transformation. His years in public life were marked by effort, seriousness, and a desire to strengthen the institutions he served. As the nation reflects on his passing, it remembers a man who gave much of his life to the public good. And while his voice may now be silent, his influence remains in the policies he shaped, the people he defended, and the enduring reminder that principled leadership can leave a lasting mark far beyond one lifetime. In the quiet memory of American history, Donald W. Riegle Jr. will be remembered not simply as a politician, but as a statesman shaped by principle, service, and the enduring call to serve something greater than himself. The tragic news was confirmed with quiet sadness, as the baseball world paused to remember Eliseo Rodriguez Delgado, a man whose career was built not on loud fame, but on steady dedication, resilience, and respect for the game. His passing marks the loss of a reliable figure in Major League Baseball, a player whose quiet strength helped shape the teams he served and the era in which he played. For many fans, Eliseo Rodriguez may not have always been the first name in headlines, but within baseball his presence was deeply valued. He represented something lasting: discipline, professionalism, and the kind of consistency that often becomes the backbone of great teams. Born on October 27, 1946, in Ponce, Puerto Rico, Rodriguez grew up during a time when baseball was more than a sport across the island. It was a dream, a path, and for many young players, a connection to something greater. Puerto Rico had already begun producing extraordinary talent, and Eliseo would become part of that proud tradition. From an early age, he showed determination and patience. His journey to Major League Baseball was not built on instant spotlight, but on perseverance. He worked steadily, earning opportunities through skill and discipline. When Rodriguez reached the major leagues, he entered a demanding world. Baseball in his era required not only athletic ability but mental toughness. As a catcher, his role carried even greater weight. He was expected to lead from behind the plate, manage pitchers, study opponents, and often make difficult decisions in moments of pressure. And that was where Eliseo Rodriguez quietly earned his respect. Over the course of his long professional career, Rodriguez played for multiple teams, including the California Angels, Milwaukee Brewers, Washington Senators, Detroit Tigers, Kansas City Royals, New York Yankees, and Baltimore Orioles. His journey across organizations reflected not instability but trust. Teams valued players like him because they understood what he brought: reliability, knowledge, and professionalism. He was the kind of player every clubhouse needed, one former teammate once reflected. Eliseo did the work, respected the game, and made people around him better. While superstar attention often focused elsewhere, Rodriguez became known for the qualities that true baseball minds deeply appreciate. He was dependable behind the plate. He understood pitchers. He embraced the long grind of the season. His career stretched across years of change in Major League Baseball, a period when the game evolved both culturally and competitively. Through it all, Rodriguez remained grounded. For Puerto Rican fans, his career also carried deeper meaning. He was part of an important generation of Latino players who continued breaking barriers and expanding representation in America's pastime. Each game he played helped strengthen that growing legacy. Baseball historians often recognize that not every important player becomes a household name. Some leave their mark through consistency, leadership, and earned respect. Eliseo Rodriguez was one of those men. As news of his passing spread, tributes came not with grand spectacle, but with genuine admiration. "Rest easy to one of baseball's quiet warriors," one fan shared online. "He played the game the right way." Another tribute read, "Players like Eliseo Rodriguez built baseball from the inside out. Reliable, humble, respected." His story was also one of resilience. The life of a professional catcher is physically demanding, often exhausting, and rarely glamorous. Yet Rodriguez remained committed. He showed up, endured, and contributed. That quiet endurance became his signature. For younger generations, his name may now inspire reflection on an era when baseball depended deeply on unsung contributors, players whose value could not always be measured in headlines, but could always be felt in the clubhouse. Beyond statistics, Rodriguez leaves behind the memory of a professional who honored his craft. He proved that greatness can sometimes be found not only in records or awards, but in the trust of teammates and the respect of the game itself. His passing is a reminder that baseball's history is shaped by many kinds of heroes. Some are celebrated loudly. Others, like Eliseo Rodriguez Delgado, become part of its foundation through years of faithful work. For his family, friends, former teammates, and devoted fans, this loss carries both sadness and gratitude. Sadness for a life now gone and gratitude for the example he left behind. Eliseo Rodriguez may have been a quiet force behind the plate, but his legacy speaks clearly. He was part of a generation that carried baseball forward with dignity, discipline, and heart. And now, as the stadium lights dim a little softer in memory, baseball says farewell to a man who never needed the loudest spotlight to matter. Because in every era the game remembers those who served it with honor. And Eliseo Rodriguez Delgado will be remembered as one of them. A steady hand, a respected competitor, and a quiet force whose legacy still echoes through the timeless rhythm of baseball.